I may get the pink slip for saying this, but if your priority is fuel efficiency, please don't watch this week's edition of Motoring 97.
TSN's Motoring 97 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And Midas, for new longer-lasting performance friction carbon metallic brake pads.
You know, you can't pick up a newspaper or magazine or even tune into this program without hearing about alternative fuels, electric vehicles, and so on. Well, despite the fact that most consumers don't want them, it's good reading, and it's also encouraging to know that manufacturers are doing their part to protect the environment. But this week, ladies and gentlemen, this week we are going to meet a company that deals with the true essence of the driving experience, and it could be a company that is General Motors' best-kept secret. The company is called Slp Automotive Canada. It's an extension of SLP Engineering south of the border. In 1993, SLP, which stands for Street Legal Performance, approached Zeeks Automotive in Montreal to build the Firehawk. Last year, following the success of the Firehawk, the company turned its attention to the Camaro and Firebird. St. Therese's General Motors plant near Montreal is the exclusive home to both cars. SLP approached General Motors with the idea of producing a custom version of both vehicles, the Camaro SS and the Firebird WS6.
Building the Camaro SS for General Motors and the world. Every car comes in here, whoever orders a Camaro SS or a WS6 Firebird for that matter, whether it's in Europe, whether it's everywhere in North America, they're all built through us. General Motors figured we could sell 20, 40 cars a year at their maximum, and we finished the year with 147 Camaro SSs in Canada for 96 model year. This is a type of client who would normally buy a car like this and go have it modified somewhere else. Typically, if you alter a brand new vehicle, you don't have a warranty anymore. If you start playing in the engine, you start playing on suspension and wheels and tires, technically speaking, your warranty can be null and void. That's the comfort in having a Camaro SS or having this type of vehicle.
It's very unique what we're doing. There is no other company in North America that is doing OEM work like us. We are not an aftermarket supplier here. We are OEM. We are a tier 1 supplier to General Motors. We did our homework, did the engineering correctly, and we paid all the money to validate these cars. We've crashed 6 cars into the wall at the Blainville Test Center because we had to test our hood the same way General Motors does all this testing. This is validation. This cost us probably $1 million over the last 3 or 4 years in validation tests for us to be OEM and be a tier 1 supplier to GM.
We're typically building between 200 and 210 cars a week. General Motors ships us these vehicles. We upgrade them to whatever specs the dealership wants them to be or the client has chosen them to be, and out they go.
People buying cars in this market want unique vehicles. They want something that's theirs, and they can choose all the little details of it. So that's why we offer all the options, basically, and why the car is so successful. Not because of the base SS package. That's probably 2 or 3% of our sales, you know, and everybody's taking every option we got.
On a typical new car, you'll have one sticker, which gives you the standard equipment and then the optional equipment from the factory, giving you an insight of what this car has or what it's coming with. What you'll see on this particular car is that it's a 2-sticker car. That's where the Z28 SS upfitter package option comes into play. There's no price on the 1 sticker. That's where the 2nd sticker comes in, where you've got the second pricing for the SS package. What you've got is the base package, which gives you the air induction hood, the spoiler, 17-inch mag wheels on the BF Goodrich tires. You've got the commemorative dash plaques, the key fobs, and the synthetic Quaker State motor oil, which comes into the base package for the Camaro SS. After this section here, you've got the extras. which our clients love to buy. That's where you've got the exhaust system, level 2 suspension, torsion differential. You can have embroidered car mats, embroidered car cover, oil cooler, and so on.
So this car becomes a $42,000 vehicle pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly, exactly. If you start going crazy, you will end up touching the 40s. What we've done for 1997 is we've built a LT4 Camaro SS, which is last year's Corvette engine, which was in the Grand Sport and in the Collector Edition series, which had 330 horsepower. And we are adding that engine into a 30th anniversary Camaro SS, and there will be a run of 106 cars. 100 cars will be in the States, 6 of them in Canada.
The Firebird Camaro market is soft. Does that concern you as a businessman?
Absolutely. Definitely sales are going down big time of the F car and all the Mustang, all this niche of 4-seat small sports cars. What's interesting is that the sales of Camaro SS are going up. You know, so that means we're gaining a greater percentage of the cars GM is producing have our option on them. In Canada, I believe it's 25% of all the V8s are Camaro SSs, which is quite amazing. So definitely the work is going away. Now we could keep on building more and more SS, but obviously it'll get to a point where GM can't afford to build the F car anymore if the sales keep falling. And we've looked at that, and we're diversifying as much as possible in many different directions.
When the cars are sold, they're just incredible people. They're enthusiasts, they know what they're talking about, they've done their homework, they know what they want, and they've been waiting for this. From what I gather, from what the people tell me, they've been waiting for a company that can build them a high-performance street car, which is legal, which is validated, which is warranted, and they can buy right off the showroom floor. And if the car has any problems, they bring it right back to the dealership and have the car fixed.
The angular approach that distinguished caddies of the past and present have given way to a fluid, rounded look that is sure to appeal to a younger audience. On this edition of Test Drive, we take a look at a horse of a different color. You know, at one time, if you mentioned the word Cadillac, everybody immediately thought of their grandparents. Well, GM hoped to change that sort of thinking with the European-inspired Catera. The new Catera is quite a radical step away from Cadillac's dyed-in-the-wool approach to design. To begin with, it's a joint venture between Cadillac and Adam Opel AG, GM's European affiliate. As such, there is a lot of European influence evident in the lines. The angular approach that distinguished caddies of the past and present have given way to a fluid, rounded look that is sure to appeal to a younger audience. Now, this should ultimately bring a new generation of customer to Cadillac. Power is supplied by a 200 horsepower double overhead cam V6 that uses a 3-stage multi-ram induction system designed to increase low-end torque, and that it does. Right from the word go, the 192 pounds-feet of torque shows up for work, meaning the engine pulls very well. It also returns a nice throaty exhaust resonance, one in keeping with its European heritage. For the record, 100 kilometers an hour is eclipsed in about 8.5 seconds. The only transmission available is an electronically controlled 4-speed that features 3 different driving modes: normal, sport and winter. Overseeing the operation of both the engine and the transmission is an onboard computer that coordinates both to ensure smooth, shock-free shifts and optimized performance. And unlike any other Caddy, the rear wheels actually do the driving. The handling is taken care of by McPherson struts up front, a multi-link design in back, speed-sensitive recirculating ball steering box, and a massive set of P225 55/16 Goodyear Eagle RSA all-season radials. Stopping power is supplied by 4-wheel disc brakes that come with the mandatory anti-lock. Even when we tested them in the extreme, they function flawlessly. Inside, the Catera has been very well thought through. First of all, when you select drive, it locks all the doors. The nice part, though, when you put it back into park, it unlocks them. Now, there's a lot of manufacturers could take a leaf out of Cadillac's book. The second thing, take the key out, the window's down.
No problem, because they've built in a retained power feature which allows the window to be powered up with the ignition key out. Dual set of climate controls that work very well, a great sounding radio, a full slate of analog instrumentation. In short, the ambience inside the Catera is what you expect to find in a luxury car. There is but one exception, and it's this monstrous coffee cup holder. This thing not only functions like it was designed by a first-year student, it looks like it too. The rear environment isn't bad either. You've got bottom warmers for the rear seats, there's plenty of head and leg room, you get a ski pass-through. The hidden bonus though, you also get split folding rear seats. They even put some thought into the trunk. First of all, these struts mean there's no physical intrusion into the usable trunk space, and hallelujah, a full-size spare tyre. Mind you, the fact it comes with a pressed steel rim is a bit chintzy.
To underscore just how different the Catera actually is, the engineers redesigned the hallowed Cadillac badge. Rather than featuring 6 black ducks swimming from right to left, they coloured one red and made it swim to the right. Too bad the powers that be didn't have the foresight to leave the new badge on the new car.
From the skid pad to the boulevard, this thing handles both situations equally well. Indeed, I think that's testament to its European heritage. And therein lies the problem. Cadillacs have not been renowned for their European heritage, and so convincing you to come in and test this vehicle is the biggest job facing GM. If they can convince you, the Catera is not a bad buy. It's time to introduce our long-term test fleet. Now, first up we have the Honda CR-V. Why the CR-V? Well, quite frankly, the SUV market is burgeoning at both ends. At one end you've got Navigator and Explorer and Suburban. At this end you've got CR-V and RAV4. Well, we figured we'd test the CR-V to see if they're going to be as good as the market's predicting. Next up, the Hyundai Elantra. Well, we at Motoring have had a lot of success with the Hyundai Accent. Was it a one-time anomaly? Well, we intend to find out by putting the Elantra to the test. Last and certainly by no means least, we have the Pontiac Transport. Now, we were impressed with the Chev Venture when we first tested it. After all, GM's had 3 kicks at the minivan can. Is the Transport all it's cracked up to be? Our long-termer will give us that answer.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns cold air intakes. The majority of cars and light trucks on the road today have some form of a ducting system to bring cold air from ahead of the radiator into the engine's air intake. Now, the components that are involved with this system are fairly fragile and easy to get damaged or misplaced. So quite often we find cars where they're missing or non-functional. By having this duct in place, the engine now ingests air from ahead of the radiator that could be as much as 80 or 100 degrees cooler than the air behind the radiator. That temperature differential will create a noticeable gain in engine performance. By the engine breathing that cooler, denser air, it'll make more horsepower. And you can actually feel it in the summertime when you're accelerating on the highway. So if your car has this kind of a system, and in all likelihood it has, have your mechanic inspect it and make sure that it's intact, not crushed, damaged, or missing, and you may gain a significant performance advantage. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Airbags may soon be in the Guinness Book of Records under Who Has the Most. And BMW could be the current leader. We have the front bag, the side airbag, and now BMW has introduced a sort of inner tube called the Inflatable Tubular Structure, or ITS. This gives some BMW models a total of 6 inflatable restraint systems for front seat occupants. BMW studies have determined that about 36% of all accidents causing severe injury or death occur in side impact collisions. The side airbag protects the torso, but the ITS adds protection for the most vulnerable part of the body, the head. Upon impact, the 5-foot tube is triggered electronically. Its diameter grows and the length decreases. The tube is designed to stay inflated for about 6 seconds and retains its effectiveness even if the window is broken or popped out by the impact. Meanwhile, we take you to New Zealand, where even airbags would be of little help to this local expert driver. He was demonstrating his driving proficiency in controlling his BMW.
Up to a speed at 80, steering movement, handbrake. You go step by step, you can learn everything on the car, and you can control each car very well, especially a BMW.
After 2 successful maneuvers, he went for one more. Except for a bruised ego, our driver was not injured, and BMW has no plans to introduce a roof airbag at this time. Okay, why not? Let's look at it one more time.
You know, the 4th generation Camaro debuted in 1993, and one of my fondest memories was watching Bill Gardner behind the wheel. It was love at first sight. But you know, if he wasn't getting so rich back at the shop, I'm sure he'd love to be here working on one of these babies. Right, Bill?
Well, Brad, I am back at the shop. I don't know about getting rich, but if I ever do, I'll tell you, I'd probably sell my soul for one of those current Camaros. They got to be one of the best performance buys on the market today, and being made in Canada, what a bonus. In any case, I've got a 68 Camaro SS here today at the shop. Happens to be my bank manager's car, and it ties in a little bit with what I want to talk about today, and that's the routing and configuration of heater hoses and coolant pipes that have been on many generations of cars. Now, this car is a 68, and cars of this era just use bulk heater hose. We used to buy it in 50-foot lengths and cut it off the roll as we needed it, and just shape it or configure it to the layout necessary for that engine compartment. But as engine compartments got more and more constricted, bigger engines and less space, it became necessary for those hoses to become shaped, and in many cases they've turned into shaped metal pipes with small pieces of hose grafted to either end to connect them to the engine and the heater core. And we want to move inside to the hoist and show you just such an example and show you what can go wrong with that type of a design. Now, in this car here, the owner has added some braided jackets to the heater hoses to sort of clean up or tidy up the appearance of the underhood area. But underneath those braided covers is a simple heater hose just like this that you could buy at any auto parts store, garage, or just about anywhere where they service machinery. Now, that bulk length of heater hose that I showed you outside on the 68 Camaro just won't work for later model vehicles where the applications are very different. And this minivan is a perfect example. It's got an optional rear heater, and in order to route that hot coolant back to the rear heater core, it's got to come underneath the vehicle and about 6 feet back from the engine. So the only practical way of doing that is using these shaped steel pipes here. And there are advantages to that, obviously, because the steel pipes are resistant to stones and abrasion, and they hold their shape and routing, which you obviously couldn't do with a rubber hose. Now, if you follow these shaped heater pipes along to the end here where they terminate at the heater core, you can see that they've grafted on about 5 or 6 inches of heater hose to the end of that pipe so that they can make the flexible connection up to the heater core. And you can see the things that happen as these things age. They get rusty and scaly, and eventually, when they get rusty enough, sooner or later you're going to have a pinhole in there and a coolant leak. Now, as I mentioned, you're going to find these shaped metal heater pipes on any minivan with a rear heater, but there's also a lot of passenger cars that have shaped metal heater pipes just like this one. Here's a pretty graphic example of what can go wrong with these metal coolant pipes. You can see in this area here it's heavily corroded, and the pipe actually fractured when we started to work with it. But prior to that, what had caused our leak was the fact that underneath all that rust and scale were some pinholes right here. As we turn it around, you can see another big one right there. And you can see that this whole pipe, this whole section of pipe is pretty heavily corroded. As we move along over here, you can see a big blister of rust right here. And as you chip it off, you start to reveal more pinholes in the pipe. And over here, there's a heavily corroded section right here. And you can see some staining over here that's probably road salt that was splashed up by the right front tire in that vehicle. As I mentioned, this particular run of pipe goes very close to the right front tire, so it's getting pitted and abraded with stones and grit coming off the tire. It gets wet and it gets that road salt. And all these things are factors that are going to shorten the life of this component. Now, here at the end of this pipe, you can see that they've grafted on a piece of heater hose that goes up to the engine. There's a little crimped cuff right here that secures the hose to the pipe. Now, it was absolutely necessary that they go to a shaped metal pipe like this for the engine bays of today's cars, because this can hold its shape and be routed close to objects that are hot or moving without the engineers having to worry about the hose changing shape or position as it heats and cools and gets pressure applied to it. And only the metal pipe will do in that instance. However, I suggest that if your car has these, and that's an awful lot of cars built in the last 10 or 12 years, you have your mechanic keep tabs on the status of these, and when you start to see extensive corrosion, or for that matter, any corrosion on these pipes, think about replacing them before you're broken down on the road. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 97.
Does this look like a nice straight used car? Well, you know what they say, beauty's only skin deep. That's next on Kenzie's Corner.
A portion of Motoring 97 is brought to you by the Solder Seal Gunk family of automotive products, makers of Puncture Seal Gold and Liquid Wrench.
You know, the biggest organ in the human body isn't the heart or the lungs, it's the skin. Funny, few of us think of that. And the biggest, most important part of your automobile isn't the engine or the transmission, it's the body shell. And yet when you buy a used car, whoever thinks to examine how strong the body is? Here's an example. This car's been whacked in the left rear door. These are the side guard door beams designed to protect the passengers. You can see how it's been crumpled here. Now this is high strength steel. This can't be repaired. The law requires this door to be completely replaced. But an unscrupulous body shop will simply pry that thing out so the window goes up and down, put a new skin over the top of it, and you'll never know. Another example is this little Toyota over here. You can see these little notches that are cut in the inner frame rail. They're designed such that when the car is hit, the body collapses in a controlled way, so the energy is not transmitted to the passenger compartment. This piece is also welded to the inner structure with a specific series of spot welds. Now, if the technician that fixes this car doesn't know enough or care enough to do it right, maybe he runs a continuous seam of welding along that weld, this piece could end up being a javelin in the chest of your passenger. You're not getting the crash protection you think you've got. What are you supposed to do about this? Well, if you're buying a used car, the law requires you to have the mechanical components examined. Why don't they require you to have the body examined? I mean, I'd be the last guy to recommend more bureaucratic involvement in free enterprise, but maybe that's our only hope. Meanwhile, if you're looking to buy a used car and you're the least bit nervous that it might have been hit, take it to a reputable body shop like this one, have them check it over. It's your car, and it's your life. I'm Jim Kenzie.
As we mentioned earlier, Camaro and Firebird sales have been softening recently, and it makes you wonder what might happen to a company like this if General Motors decided to stop producing them. Well, obviously SLP does not want that to occur, but if it did, they don't plan on packing up and moving out of town. They like what they're doing and they like their clients, and they've got a few surprises up their sleeve that will keep everybody happy. So stay tuned for more. That's it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
I think that's what's driving the market today is the fact that the baby boomer generation now has money in their pockets and they remember these cars, and in particular, if they're going to collect one, they want to own one of the ones that were considered the most desirable back then.
TSN's Motoring 97 has been brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And Midas for new, longer-lasting performance friction carbon metallic brake pads.